Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin with Swissamerica Trading Corporation. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of our podcast entitled The Secret War on Cash, as we take a look at the developments of our economy and our financial markets, things that have been happening, things that are on the horizon and seemingly are about to happen. I have with me my frequent co-host, Chris Agelastos. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
How are things with you?
Doing well here. We've finally got some rain in Arizona, so that's a good thing. My plants can finally drink a little bit.
That's good. Rain in Arizona is about as rare as some of the gold coins that we deal in. So that's a good thing always.
That's why it has to be celebrated. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Today, Chris, what we're going to talk about is something that it affects everybody. Inflation has been a hot topic in the financial markets for quite some time now. And any of the financial shows that you might watch or have been watching over the course of the last several months, I should say, have been covering it. Depending on the day, sometimes we're being told it's in check, and then seemingly the very next day, we're being told that it's out of control. I think all of us are smart enough to realize that when it comes to buying real goods, meaning things we kind of need to survive, there is really nothing today that costs less or even close to what it did a year ago. The first article that we're looking at today weighs in on the whole discussion, and it's pretty specific on their belief that the Fed has botched this whole inflation situation, which they believe is going to throw us straight into a recession. This is certainly not something any of us want to hear, but by the same token, I don't think this kind of prediction comes to anyone as much of a surprise. Chris, do you believe this is the ticking time bomb they're describing and something we have to look forward to in 2024?
Yeah, unfortunately, and I know it'll shock a lot of people that the Fed actually messed something up, right? Because they normally do such a great job. But
Right.
yeah, they really what they did, and not necessarily, I suppose, on purpose, making this mistake, but they raised rates at the fastest pace in over 40 years. So if we go back 40 years, obviously we've had some ups and downs in the economy and other recessions. At no point in the last 40 years did they raise rates as much as they did here and as fast as they did. So, they essentially went from, near zero interest rate to over 5.5% increase. And so that really, pumped the brakes on money. So when you hear about, monetary policy, being very tight, what that means is people don't have as easy access to money because of these high rates. And when you couple with that, the fact that hiring has, virtually ground to a halt. I know we've talked about that, recently as well. Employers are not looking on to take on more employees and more expenses. Part of the reason for that, money is tight, right? It takes money to hire people and pay people. So when you put those factors together, I mean, they're right in this article. I think we were really lucky to avoid a recession in 2023. But unfortunately, 2024 isn't going to be so lucky. I mean, I think we're definitely going to feel the pain here.
Yeah, and I'm fearful and concerned that you're absolutely right, and actually, to a great extent, I think a lot of that pain has already begun, and people are already feeling it and have been feeling it for a little while now. And this next article I wanted to talk about, mainly because I found the title to be funny. It's on topic with the inflationary discussion, and it gets into the Fed's term for inflation, which is inflation's quote terminal rate. Now, as you see the article, the reason I found the title funny, inflation gives Fed the finger. This terminal rate, what I found interesting about this term is they say you'll not find a definition of this term in any financial literature or publication. It's simply just a term the Fed made up. And to that point, it seems as though much of the explanation we're given by the Fed as to the current and future state of inflation seems somewhat contrived or made up as well. I mean, what do you think this all means as it pertains to what we might expect to see this year as far as interest rates and inflation are concerned.
Yeah, well, what they're saying with this title is, as funny as it is that really inflation doesn't care who the Fed is or what the Fed says, right? This is math. It's going to work regardless of what announcement the Fed makes. And unfortunately for us, we're stuck between 3 and 4% pretty consistently over the last couple of years with inflation. So to put that into perspective, because I know, 3%, 4%, if we're talking about interest rates, that sounds low to people. When we're talking about inflation, in 2020, during President Trump, his time in office, we were at 1.2%. Okay. So to be around 3.5% now is about a 300% increase. So to give you, some perspective of what that really means. And, looking into this, and they touch on it in here a bit, if you're 25 years old, let's say you just got out of school, you got a great job, you're making $100,000 a year, and you figure, okay, I'm gonna work until I'm 65 years old, right? The American dream. That $100,000 today, by the time you are retiring, if you're fortunate enough to at 65, is going to give you the purchasing power of $25,000. So, this is what our youth, who we see oftentimes disgruntled, talking about their student loans and the fact that they are having a hard time making a living wage. This is what they have to look forward to, losing 75% of their purchasing power. And that's assuming we can keep inflation between 3 and 4%. We saw upwards of 10%, a year and a half, 2 years ago. So the other thing too that is frustrating here about the Fed is, they like to create new terms or use phrases to make us feel confident and not worry about this. And so they've also created core inflation, which again, we've talked about before, but to remind people, it's a lower number, so it sounds better, but they take out gas, food, electricity, all right, heating for your home. So all
of the things that we use every day.
That's exactly it. So as long as you don't need anything to live a normal life and survive, this inflation won't affect you. So, unfortunately,
I guess that's a very good point. If you don't have to spend money on anything, then technically inflation doesn't exist because you're not spending money on things. But I don't know many people in my life and neighborhood or what have you that have that luxury of not being able to pay the power bill, the gas bill, maybe the mortgage, et cetera.
They kind of poke fun at that in this article and say, essentially, if you don't drive or eat and you live in a tent, this inflation is not going to affect you as badly. So exactly it's going to be a rough year. I think, we're headed towards recession, 6% unemployment. And it really just means that this soft landing that they've been trying to peddle, is not going to be so soft.
Right. And I think another important thing to point out that is discussed in these articles is that, and for those tuning in that may or may not be aware of this, even when we talk about inflation not being a problem, they make the distinct point to say it's still there. It's just when they're saying inflation is in check or it's not a problem, they're just saying it's not going up as much as it used to go up. We are still paying higher prices for things. It's not like prices are going down. It's just they are not going up as much as they were before. So, well, Chris, thank you so much for that. And for those of you tuning in, if you'd like any information that Swiss America has to offer on this, please, this as well as gold or other things, please feel free to contact our office at 1-800-289-2646 or visit us online at swissamerica.com. That's SWISS America, all one word, .com. And if you are not subscribed to this podcast, we'd love you to do so. And if you're not following us on social media, please do the same. It's been great hearing from you here, Chris, on not the best of topics, but it's the reality of this world we live in. And it certainly will be something that I'm virtually certain that we'll be keeping a close eye on as we venture into 2024. So thanks for tuning in. Chris, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time.